This is Everyday Spirituality with Connect.Faith. I am Debbie Bronkema, and I'm here today with Teresita Matos-Post, who is the Executive Director of Beth-El Farmworker Ministry in Wimauma, Florida. Beth-El's mission is feeding the mind, spirit, and body of the farm-working community, helping our neighbors in need through opportunities for hunger relief, education, healthcare, and spiritual growth. Teresita, when we talked and got to know each other just a bit a while ago, I learned that you're a great match for our creativity, spirituality, and justice component because you have a love of some creative acts that have actually brought you to this place in justice ministry. So I'd really love if you just start by telling us a little bit of your story.
Absolutely. Well, thank you first for having me and for giving me this platform to share about the work at Beth-El. I'm really excited to connect with your community of faith because it's along the lines of what my faith journey has been. For myself personally and my own spiritual development, poetry has been a lifeline, not only as therapy, but also as a channel to share my voice. And for me, being very young, growing up in a somewhat dysfunctional family, in terms of dealing with a father who went to war and was dealing with PTSD, and a very dominant. He controlled our family lifestyle in a very dominant way. Poetry became for me a way of expressing what I was thinking and feeling, because those were the things that we didn't have this space to share. So something that became that was so personal to me as a mechanism for survival later on in life, when I discovered Christianity in a new, refreshing way, became also a way for me to live out my faith and follow my call. So it's been an interesting journey. I never thought God could use something that for me was so natural, to talk about justice, to cry out for those who are disenfranchised, who are not able to speak for themselves.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great to hear about how healing came out of your creative journey with poetry. I really love that is a piece of what heals us from whatever breaks us along the way. That's really, really powerful.
There's a special power, as you mentioned, in the arts and creativity, and also doing that together in community. There's something special about that.
You mentioned to me that part of your sense of call to this ministry came from an opportunity you had to share your art. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started doing spoken word poetry in seminary, and they gave me like a platform to explore that in a lot of freedom. And so that's when I started really using my poems in a more public way. And so that started to grow from those very humble beginnings in seminary. And so as I accepted a call to ministry as a pastor, more opportunities came about, and I was invited to share a call and response type of spoken word at a vigil that I'm with the United Methodist Church. And at that time I was serving in the Greater New Jersey Conference, and we were doing a vigil at the time when many of immigrant families were being separated at the border and sent into detention centers. And there is a big ICE detention center in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And we planned a witness, and the idea was to let the families know that we were there for them, but also call out against the injustice that was being done against this community, against our community. And so I did the call and response, and it was beautiful, and it was touching. And I remember we all put our hands against the very walls of that detention center. And I remember to myself wishing that it was similar to Jericho, right? That we were crying out, and that literally that wall will break down. And I had a strong sense of helplessness, knowing that it was important that we was doing, but it wasn't enough. We were not sure that these families could even know that we were there. There were no windows. So it was heartbreaking. And also, I hate to use the word hopeless, but that's what I sense in the pit of my, that's how I felt at that moment. And I remember going home, wrestling with that feeling and saying, I say both prayers to God. And I said, what is this? What is this? This is crazy. This is craziness. This is useless. Why is this happening? And is there anything else I could do? And I had that very, very strong sense of call that I was being called to serve my people. And so, interesting, love. I'm from Latina background. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, but I have always served in white American churches. I had never had the opportunity to serve as a minister, as a professional minister in a Latino congregation. And so, so I felt that very strongly. At the same time as I was trying to find my footing in the work of advocacy for immigrant families, my family, we decided to move from New Jersey to Florida. And and I was feeling this sense of dislocation again, and also a sense I'm very loyal and obstinate, so I felt like I was abandoning the work that we had started to do in New Jersey, and I felt like a traitor. And so, but I knew that the move was the right thing to do. We moved not knowing what we were going to do in Florida. Neither my husband or I had career paths. We were just following this sense that it was the right thing to do. Once in Florida,
very brave.
Yeah, no, it is very brave. It is, but interestingly enough, both for my husband and I, this is the way that it has worked for us, and we have an adventurous spirit, so I guess it's the right thing for us. But once in Florida, I got to reconnect with one of my colleagues from seminary, and she said, hey, there is this opportunity to work with this Farmworker Ministry. And it was for the executive director. And for me, that was like, oh, that's way above my pay grade. Like, I'm a humble pastor. I pastor people. I preach. But I do have a strong background in non-for-profit work. I worked professionally close to a decade with the Girl Scouts. And so I know how non-for-profits work, and so I gave it a try, and it worked out that this is where I was being called to serve. And so it has been like a homecoming. It has felt like this is where I was meant to be. And that sounds very romantic, but that's really has been my experience thus far. And so, yeah, it's a big job.
Sounds like it was that there was a call that you didn't even know was going to happen that came to you. Yeah, right from the beginning. So that's pretty powerful. How long have you been with Beth-El?
I started, I'm fresh. It feels like it's been forever since COVID, but I just started officially January 1st of 2020.
Okay, right. That was one of my questions, is how has COVID affected your ministry?
Well, So COVID for me at Beth-El has been like the way things have always been.
Okay.
But I would have to say that, we serve a community that has been disenfranchised since forever. So crisis and survival is all that this community knows. So COVID simply has complicated that further. So for us at Beth-El, during the COVID crisis has been a commitment to be a constant, right? And a community that knows too well what it means to be left alone, literally, and forgotten. For us, it has become even more deeper, the commitment to be here, to be open, to be serving, for the community to know that we stand with them through thick and thin. So we have been very, very, very strict about our guidelines for staying safe and thanks be to God, we haven't had anybody gotten sick, and we have been open every single week
Oh,
distributing between 800 and 1,000 grocery
oh my
bags
goodness.
on a weekly basis, and supplying clothing and financial assistance for rent and utilities to the farm working families and all our neighbors who are experiencing job loss.
So are you finding the local community wanting to help the neighbors? Are you finding that your donations are going up, I hope, to help you meet that need?
Oh my gosh. Yes, people have been more than generous. The community that supports us is committed to this work and are generous and compassionate and empathetic. And so donations are coming in monetarily in forms of food, face masks. We have been able to distribute over 50,000 face masks to the farm working community in this area. Supplies like toilet paper, when others couldn't find it, we were a hub for it. So
That's great.
so that was good. The one challenge we have encountered, of course, is volunteers, because yes, a big percentage of our volunteer base are retirees, and so they are in the vulnerable population. So we understand, they have to take the precautions. And so we've been working with a core group of people with teams of 10. And just now we're starting to see some people feeling a little bit more comfortable coming physically to help us.
Great. So what about the fight for racial justice? How is that impacting the work you do?
Well, that's always a tension. There's always a big tension in that, because the community where we are geographically located in, it's close to 75% Latino and African American.
Okay.
And so the politics and the dynamics, sociopolitical dynamics in our community are very complex. As you can expect, the farmers are mostly white families who have been historically in control of the economics of the area, and have a high leverage in the politics and the laws and regulations around the Wimauma area. Our community, most of them don't speak English, so the political participation is limited when they can, even when they can. And so we wrestle a lot with that tension, in the sense that we don't know who to trust. We don't know when we're talking to people who express interest, what does that really mean? I know at Beth-El, we have encountered ICE agents coming in, and they don't engage, but they do keep a close eye, and so that's always there's always fear. We have a very engaged sheriff's office who wants to collaborate with us and have given us many reasons to trust them, but our families coming from Latin American countries, their engagement with law enforcement is always, it's never positive. Well, never is absolute, but most often it's not a positive engagement. And so it's really challenging to bridge those relationships.
Right.
We have wonderful volunteers and partners who intend really well. And we always deal with those, what we call microaggressions and the questions of, well, are these people all legal who you're serving? And my question is always would you care any less for them if they weren't documented? And so I
change the term.
I educate people on changing the term, and some a lot of our own church friends catch it, and they're like, oh yeah, what do you mean? And some of them do want to learn more, and they want to know what the proper way of addressing people is, better ways of addressing people. So we deal on a daily basis with that, with microaggressions, and a little bit of understanding about the challenges and the gifts. I always talk about the gifts that the immigrant community brings to our community. And so that's a daily task. It does take a toll, but
It's exhausting.
we do the good work of turning it around and doing the best we can, not only to preserve the dignity and the humanity of our people, the people of our community, but also educating others.
Yeah, you have education in the mission statement, and it's occurring to me that education is really about a lot of educating the volunteers as much as anything. Yeah,
Education at all levels. And I think that
yeah.
so cross-cultural encounters are challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I remember on my at my seminary experience, we went to Malaysia for a cross-cultural trip, and Malaysia is a very, very, very diverse religiously and ethnically, and in all the ways that you can say. And we came as bright-eyed, bushy-tailed seminarians talking about, yay, diversity, diversity, diversity. And one of the first things that we encountered was everybody saying, what are you celebrating about diversity? This is hard. This is hard work every day.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And that is the truth. Cross-cultural experiences are exhausting. So it requires that if we are called to be bridge builders and to bring about peace in our communities and justice, that we grow a thick skin and become resilient in committing to the work for the long haul. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And so, yeah, it's
That makes a
exhausting.
lot. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds exhausting. It also sounds like they found a good person to be doing this, because you definitely have the framework to look at the big picture and see the marathon. So
Yeah, it's
anyway.
I think that I enjoy a challenge more than anything, and it's a learning curve. One of the things that I have reflected and learned about myself, and I have been able to transfer that insight to others, is that a lot of people assume that, hey, Beth-El has the first Latina executive director. That's awesome. And there's a lot of assumptions that come with that. She speaks Spanish. She now understands, who we are, where we come from. The truth of the matter is, I don't. I am Puerto Rican. My privilege is that I was born with U.S. citizenship. I don't know what it's not to be able to get a job. I don't know what it is to be undocumented in America. So, yes, speaking Spanish facilitates building relationships, but it also facilitates me learning about the community and
Right.
not making assumptions about what I think I know and what others might expect for me to know about the community. So yeah, it's
That's good.
I think what helps me is, and what helps my team too, is that we're all learners, and so that is one of the skills that are required to do this work, that you remain open.
So I guess my question then is, how do you keep up your spiritual energy for your journey now?
Yeah, so you that little gap between moving from New Jersey to Florida, I was without a church. I didn't have to preach every week. Now I have some time, and I was able to develop a contemplative practice and to
Oh, great.
dive into meditation. I shared a little bit about my home background. I always suffered from anxiety and didn't have a lot of mechanisms to cope with that. And I found in meditation um, an opportunity to center myself and to explore the inner work, doing the inner work, and that has been transformative for my own self care and spiritual formation. I sit on my mat every morning
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
Yeah.
and not that I have to do it, but I enjoy doing it. And it has become a practice that I can extend not only when I'm sitting on my mat, but throughout the day.
Mm.
And finding those little key moments of silence have been a lifeline, and also a surrendering. There is a surrendering. I have had to really practice what it is to rely on God to do God's work. And so what does that look like is that I have to do the very best I can, and some days I don't have what I think is the very best, and still
Right.
that's good enough. So I have had to make friends with that.
So, is there anything else you'd like to tell me today as you're thinking about how you would connect with our community, which is Connect.Faith? It's an online community of people who are just connecting around creativity, spirituality, and justice.
Yeah, I would like to encourage the each and every member of your community to look at creativity not as an escape, but as a tool of engagement, and
Mm.
how needed it is for us to use those skills and those passions and talent to share with the world who you are. It's important. In this work here, working with the migrant families that work at the farms who glean and pick the food that we eat every day. The connection, the interconnectedness of who we are as a people of God, and the people who do this work. It's there. That lifeline, that connectedness is there. And so I would say, please use your talent and use your creativity to extend and expand our voice.
Wonderful. Wonderful. If people wanted to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, how would they find you?
You can always visit, you can learn more about Beth-El by visiting our website at www.beth-el.org. I'm on all social media platforms as Teresita Matos-Post, and I have a poetry website.
Oh, nice.
It's as www.poeticprophecy.com.
Oh, fun. That's terrific. Thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to be with me today. I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit and understanding more about your journey and how that affects all of our journeys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Surely, surely. Let me get to the